Alright, so last time we talked about the Spellblades and their issues and alluded to the fact that they have tons of issues that are the same as melee carries. Unlike the last video, I won't go too into depth for each carry's issues, but I will mention some things about them. This is because, unlike Spellblades, melee carries pretty much are screwed by the exact same thing in the end. Basically, to understand the issue with melee carries, just imagine a bully grabbing some kid and putting them an arm's length away as a poor kid swings at him but comes short. That's basically the melee carry issue. You cannot get close enough to anyone to deal any meaningful damage without just being blown up or kept back. I also have to make it clear what a melee carry is. A melee carry is basically someone who aims to cut you down from melee range with mostly pure auto attacks, similar to how a marksman does it from a range. Champions like Master Yi, Tryndamere, and such are accepted examples, although Riot has tried to stretch it to others. Before you say, what about Yasuo and X other champion? Well, we'll get to that soon enough. I have to bring up one other thing before people lose their shit, obviously. This obviously applies way more to organized play than solo queue, because you can circumvent most champions' problems in solo queue simply by being better or your opponents being stupid. This video is also only truly about when champions are being played, how Riot intended them to be played, rather than how they end up, such as Master Yi being built tanky and stuff like that. I am aware that tank builds exist and can be dominating for a while, but that's besides the point. The archetype of the pure melee carry simply does not function. To put it simply, League has very few tools for them to exist in a healthy way. It lacks items to support them that aren't broken as hell, of course, it lacks mechanics, and it is severely lacking the risk-reward factor most other games have that would encourage them. As a result of this, melee carries have never existed in ways that were perfectly healthy. They are always either garbage or insanely overpowered, and then thus quickly Riot shuts them down. I know some of you despise Dota, but it has a solution, among others, that makes melee carries possible. As much as some people despise it, turn rates make it possible for melee carries to even stand a chance against ranged carries, since they can't get kited as easily, and some of them can't be kited at all if they get within a certain distance or buy a certain item. League lacks this, and it becomes readily apparent that melee carries stand absolutely no chance in hell. Of course, at this point, it's too late to implement this since it would radically alter the game, but it is something that forever doomed a certain class of champion. Essentially, a melee champion needs several tools to be able to even function in game. This is why assassins, AD casters, or bruisers can actually work while pure melee carries can't, and why Riot has stopped trying to develop more and is in fact trying to hybridize them. Right now, we only have 3 pure melee carries, which are Master Yi, Tryndamere, Sword of Aatrox, and debatably Nocturne and Warwick, and they are routinely getting the short end of the stick. If they ever become strong, they tend to get super nerfed, and Riot is content with just letting them be solo queue stompers, except Aatrox, which just sort of sucks everywhere. Again, I know some of you will bring up others, but we'll get to that, I promise. To make sense of this, we have to have a quick rundown of history. Melee carries have always just sort of sucked. There have been times where they were dominant, but that was mostly because systems at play made them glaringly overpowered in comparison to the rest, or there simply wasn't enough answers to them. Early on in the game's life, crowd control was wickedly strong and range was far stronger. Melee basically stood no chance in hell of doing anything. Hell, it wasn't just melee carries that had an issue, but all melee champions. And thus began the experimentations by Riot in order to infuse melee champions with power. We got the likes of Aurelia and Xin Zhao very early during this, and we all know how messy that was. It continues to be from time to time. At some point, bruisers were added to the game, and they were a great addition that helped work against the melee versus ranged issue. It didn't answer the melee carry issue, but it was a step in the right direction and helped smooth the game out for the future. Then came Fiora, who was probably one of the most important releases of all time in terms of Riot learning the game. She was an experiment at making melee carries work by infusing some assassin-light qualities into a carry. She ended up being cursed with weaknesses of assassins without the qualities they have to overcome them, while also being super overburdened by the melee weaknesses. Her future rework addressed some of these, and in the end didn't necessarily function how it was intended since she ended up being built tankier than expected, but hey, it was worth a shot twice, right? Aatrox was released at some point and was basically a regretful release by Riot, which is startling that he was even released, given that they had similar issues with high sustain champions in the form of Vladimir, and how the meta was overblown with too much sustain as it is. Either way, he disappeared as some changes to the game came quickly. Be a bit skeptical about this next one, but I remember reading that Darius was also an attempt of making melee carries work, which is why, despite him being thought of as a bruiser, he didn't really have self-tank abilities other than stats. He was intended to be a melee carry with bruiser-esque boons like strong ability values who would attack you until you were ready to be dunked. If this is true, I think it's more Riot's attempt at fusing AD caster aspects into a melee carry, similar to how they tried making, Fiora with assassin-like qualities to try to see if something can work out. Riot eventually stopped trying for a while, and then they released Yasuo, who, as I alluded to, has a lot of AD caster qualities, but not at the level of someone like Pantheon. However, Yasuo definitely has way more general stabbing potential than Pantheon, so this ends up making him another one of those hybrid carry attempts Riot tried. Sure, the champion is bandaged as all hell with a lot of power, and sure he was giga nerfed, but technically he succeeded in being played how they intended him to be played. It is just that they were reminded why things like this can become unfun for people, and very quickly broke his legs. This is less detailed than the Spellblades one for sure, but it's mostly because Riot has essentially given up on the whole archetype and is basically going to infuse it with qualities of other subclasses or just alter it completely. It's remarkable to point out this because it's one of those sort of things that seems as if Riot knew there was no hope for them for a long time and just stopped caring, while for other subclasses like Spellblade they feel they can still make them work. I think Riot already alluded to the fact that we're going to see some changes coming to champions like Master Yi and Nocturne and such, so we'll see what happens with that. Either way, let me know what you think about this discussion video in the comments below and whether or not you agree. Thank you for watching. This channel is supported by my sponsors, Crunchyroll and Loot Crate. Check out the description below for links to the websites. Signing up for any trials, including Crunchyroll's free anime trial, greatly supports my channel. Also remember to give the video a like to support the channel and subscribe if you haven't yet. I've also made a Patreon now, and if you wish to support me through that medium, then I welcome it.